Just in case you're a person who's had trouble understanding what the MAGA movement is about, I know I did for a long time. I resisted thinking it was a cult until two things happened that showed me it is a brainwashed cult. And I could not figure for the life of me, you know, these people just wallow in hate and want our government institutions torn down. And they believe the most prolific liar in history. But I was on Facebook one day and I was in a conversation, and someone came into the conversation and said something about Trump. And I said, well, he lied about that. And I'm sure I shared a link or proof. But anyway, so when I made that comment, he lied about that. I said, don't you think lying is wrong? She wouldn't answer the question. And so she said something else. And I just went back to, don't you think lying is wrong? She went on to something else. I came back to, don't you think lying is wrong? She wouldn't answer the question. And that's when it dawned on me they know he's a liar, they know he's lying, and they can't say lying is wrong because if they did, it would be criticizing dear leader. So that was the first big light bulb moment. And the second one, I was watching a video clip on Jimmy Kimmel, and they had sent like this person who was like an interviewer out to talk to MAGA people. And the interviewer said, I'm going to tell you something, and I just want your reaction to it. And so they told these people, here is something that Biden did. And the people wrenched their faces all up and their tone became angry. Oh, well, Biden, of course he would do that. And they just went off on it, why it was bad and why it was wrong. And then the interviewer said, oh, wait, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It wasn't Biden who said that or did that. It was Trump. And suddenly their faces softened, their tone changed. Oh, I'm sure he had a good reason for doing that. So, total recalibration of your ethics to accommodate Trump. And I was like, yep, it's a brainwashed cult. I thought they were just victims of misinformation, but no, it's a cult. I had also watched the documentary Bad Faith because the MAGA movement is at its core a white supremacy movement, actually, and it has Christian nationalists tied to it. There is an element of religion there, although it's quite the fake religion, and it's a religion twisted to be what MAGA wants it to be. And the third element of it is the misogyny. They have to control women. Women have lost the idea of where their place is, barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. So women have become too smart, too fast, too progressive. They're doing too much. They're leaving those traditional roles that MAGA covets, because MAGA wants to go back to the day where the white man was in power, where in America it was mostly white men. And it's that's what it is at its core. And once I understood that, I was like, that makes sense. They go along with anything he does, as long as we're going backwards, as long as we're tearing down our government institutions and trying to change everything back to when the white man was in power, because pasty white skin that sunburns easy, it's a special quality. But to me, there's two tiers of MAGA. There's the everyday MAGA, and then there's the billionaire class MAGA. The inauguration was moved indoors not because of the weather, but because Trump did not want to mingle with the everyday MAGA. He wanted to bask in the glow of the top tier MAGA. And I don't think the regular MAGAs have figured out they are the pawns for the top tier MAGA. And the top tier MAGA, the reason they want to go backwards, and most of them are the same things that the regular MAGA is, but they want to go backwards to benefit them monetarily. Their businesses and corporations, they they want to go back to a time when we didn't have all these regulations to protect our water, our air, our wildlife, our people, our, work policies, anything that they feel hinders them, they want to go back to the time when they could pollute and pillage at will. And that that is how everything, once I realized all that, everything fell into place. It makes perfect sense. The MAGAs, they don't stand for anything except Trump. That's it. They don't care that he's a pedophile. They don't care that he has now come out and said you can't have guns. They don't care that this administration has literally cost people their lives. They don't care that Doge was fake and did nothing but damage and in the long run ended up costing us money. They don't care that it was about Elon Musk actually benefiting himself personally and firing all the watchdogs that were watching his businesses and keeping consumers safe. And there's so much more to that, but I've talked about that in another video. But now it makes sense. So if you didn't understand it before, know that it is a cult. It is a brainwashed cult, and it is tied to Trump. It is a white supremacy movement at its core, laced with religion and with a side of misogyny. And these emotionally stunted little insecure white men, they got to get back to that place where they felt powerful. And they don't care what happens to get back to that. They don't care what they destroy. This immigration war is not about criminals. And I am the first one to want undocumented criminals deported. I will support that all the way. I'm the first one to say we need immigration reform and we need something better. But this all-out war, this racial profiling, this just grabbing people off the streets without due process, there's a reason they're not getting due process. And that's because they're not all criminals. And if you understand, America is an immigrant country, and sorry to break it to you, but um, it's not about criminals because none of us want criminals on the street. And once once I understood how they, like I said, would recalibrate their ethics, it doesn't matter what Trump does because he's in the regressive movement and he's waging a war on the people they hate. That's the only thing they stand for. None of the other things they have always said they've stood for, they do not. But for me, that made everything fall into place, and at least I understand why they vote against their own interests and why they support such a horrible, horrible person. And I hope that helps you understand it too, because at least you know that. You know what's driving it. And that's all I have for today.